Paolo Maldini, clean tackle. Maldini's defending felt less like tackling and more like time travel. Strikers thought they had a step, then suddenly the ball was gone and Maldini was already moving upfield as if he'd planned it 3 seconds earlier. His signature was the art of staying on his feet. He mastered body positioning so precisely that attackers ended up running into blind alleys they didn't know existed. Commentators and players often repeated his famous line, "If I have to make a tackle, I've already made a mistake." And he lived by it. In over 900 games for AC Milan, Maldini rarely looked desperate. He played with a calm assurance, dismantling legends like Ronaldo Nazario, Baggio, and Batistuta without chaos or fuss. His clean dispossessions became Milan's launchpad. One moment he'd steal the ball off a striker's boots, the next he was curling a pass to launch an attack. His anticipation was so sharp that he finished his career with 5 Champions League titles and 7 Serie A titles, all while barely collecting yellow cards compared to other defenders of his era. Franz Beckenbauer, the sweeper's surge, nicknamed Der Kaiser, he glided out from the back like he owned the pitch. Instead of hoofing the ball clear, his trademark move was picking it up deep, lifting his head and striding forward with elegance that turned defense into attack in seconds. Fans were watching the invention of the modern libero. His sweeper surges became Bayern Munich's backbone during their golden era. He captained them to 3 straight European Cups in the 1970s, running games from the back like a conductor leading an orchestra. And on the international stage, his style was just as iconic. He played 103 times for West Germany, winning the 1972 European Championship and the 1974 World Cup, all while turning the sweeper role into a global blueprint. One of the most famous images of his career came in 1970, when he played with his arm in a sling against Italy after dislocating his shoulder, still pushing the ball forward like nothing could stop him. That mix of elegance and toughness defined him. Nemanja Vidić, the no-nonsense clearance. His trademark move was throwing himself into danger, diving headers, crunching tackles, and clearances that looked more like demolition jobs. When a ball dropped loose in the box, strikers hesitated. Vidic didn't. He went in head first, even if boots were flying around him. At Manchester United, his partnership with Rio Ferdinand became legendary. Ferdinand brought the elegance, Vidic brought the violence. Together, they anchored a defense that carried United to 5 Premier League titles and the 2008 Champions League crown. Opponents knew that taking on Vidic meant walking away bruised. His timing on last-ditch headers and aerial duels made him one of the most feared defenders in England. His reputation reached cult status because of moments where he seemed almost superhuman. He once played on with a broken nose, blood pouring, still winning duels. He cleared balls off the line with his chest, face, whatever body part was available. In 2009, he was named Premier League Player of the Season, a rare honor for a defender, and by then his fearless style had already become folklore at Old Trafford. For fans, he symbolized a throwback era of defending when courage mattered as much as skill. Roberto Carlos, the bulldozing shoulder challenge. Everyone remembers his free kicks that bent physics, but his real defensive signature came when wingers tried to take him on. Shoulder to shoulder, they never stood a chance. Carlos would lower that stocky frame, unleash raw power, and send attackers tumbling like ragdolls. It wasn't dirty, just explosive force wrapped in perfect timing. His speed made it even more devastating. Carlos could bomb forward to whip in a cross, then in a blink, turn and chase down a winger who thought they'd escaped. The recovery run usually ended with a crunching shoulder challenge or a clearance that got the Bernabeu roaring. That bulldozer style became a highlight reel in itself, especially in Real Madrid's Galactico era, where he spent over a decade terrorizing opponents. For Brazil, the move carried the same energy. He stacked up 125 caps, a World Cup in 2002, and multiple Copa Americas, blending attacking flair with defensive intimidation. Strikers who tested him often ended up on the turf, shaking their heads, wondering how a left-back could hit like a centre-half. Carles Puyol, the last-ditch sliding block. His signature move was the desperate body-first sliding block. When strikers wound up for what looked like a certain goal, out of nowhere came Puyol, hair flying, body stretched, and a perfectly timed lunge that turned a shot into a highlight-saving block. For Barcelona and Spain, these interventions were as celebrated as goals. One of the most famous came at the 2010 World Cup semi-final. With Germany pressing, Puyol charged into the box and launched himself headlong at the ball, turning danger into safety. A few days later, he scored the match-winning header in the final against the Netherlands, cementing his status as the lion-hearted leader of Spain's golden generation. At Barcelona, he was the anchor of Pep Guardiola's tiki-taka empire. Amid all the flair of Messi, Xavi, and Iniesta, Puyol was the guarantee that if everything broke down, someone was willing to sacrifice themselves to stop disaster. He made 593 appearances for Barca, lifting 6 La Liga titles and 3 Champions Leagues, each one with sweat, grit, and sliding blocks that defined his style. Rio Ferdinand, the elegant interception. The others lunged in, Rio glided. His trademark move was the elegant interception, stepping across a striker just before the pass arrived, nicking the ball cleanly, and striding forward like he'd planned it 2 plays earlier. At Manchester United, that calm presence became priceless. He arrived from Leeds in 2002 for a then-record £30 million, a fee that raised eyebrows, but within a few seasons he justified every penny. Partnered with Nemanja Vidić, he became the yin to his yang. While Vidic flew into collisions, Rio specialized in reading danger early, cutting it out before it became chaos. That balance anchored United's defense during their most dominant era under Sir Alex Ferguson. In the 2007-08 season, Ferdinand's anticipation helped United secure both the Premier League and the Champions League. He captained the side in the Moscow final against Chelsea, lifting the trophy after one of the most dramatic penalty shootouts in football history. For a centre-back known for composure, it was the perfect symbol. What made Rio stand out wasn't just skill, but swagger. He defended with style, clean, confident, almost casual at times. That aura got into strikers' heads. They weren't just trying to beat a defender, they were trying to beat a defender who looked like he knew exactly what they were about to do. Sergio Ramos, the big match interception. His signature move was the last-second intervention, the kind of block or interception that swung entire matches. One moment strikers thought they were in, the next Ramos came crashing across, ball gone, crowd erupting. It wasn't always pretty, but it was decisive. At Real Madrid, those moments stacked up in the biggest games. The most iconic came in the 2014 Champions League final. With Atletico Madrid seconds away from winning, Ramos rose for a stoppage-time header that tied the match and opened the door for Madrid's long-awaited La Decima. But it wasn't just goals. Time after time, he threw his body into lunges, blocks, and flying headers inside his own box to keep Madrid alive. Of course, Ramos' style carried a dark edge. He picked up 26 red cards in La Liga, more than anyone else in the league's history. Yet that aggression was part of his identity, teetering on the line between savior and villain. Fans never doubted that Ramos lived for big nights, and he delivered with 4 Champions League titles, 2 Euros, and a World Cup for Spain. Javier Mascherano, the desperation recovery tackle. He wasn't the tallest, the quickest, or even a natural centre-back, but his signature became the desperation recovery tackle. When attackers thought they were through, Mascherano would come flying across the turf, lunging at full stretch to hook the ball away. He turned the last-second rescues into an art form, playing with a level of commitment that made him indispensable for both club and country. His most legendary moment came in the 2014 World Cup semi-final against the Netherlands. With Arjen Robben sprinting clear and Argentina's tournament on the line, Mascherano chased him down and produced a sliding block that has since gone down in World Cup folklore. Robben admitted later he thought he was in on goal until Mascherano's lunge stopped him cold. That tackle alone summed up his career. Fearless, perfectly timed, and fueled by sheer determination. At Barcelona, Mascherano reinvented himself as a central defender, winning 5 La Liga titles and 2 Champions Leagues. Surrounded by ball-playing artists like Messi, Xavi, and Iniesta, his grit gave the team balance. Whenever tiki-taka cracked, he was the safety net, throwing himself into challenges that saved games. For Argentina, he became El Jefecito, the little boss, captaining with heart and producing match-saving tackles on the biggest stages. Cafu, the overlapping sprint and recovery. His trademark was the overlapping run, flying down the right flank, delivering crosses, then racing all the way back to shut down the counter. For defenders, stamina is survival, but Cafu turned it into a weapon. He could sprint 90 minutes at full throttle and still look like he had another gear left. At AS Roma, his surging runs made him a fan favorite, helping them lift the Serie A title in 2001. Later, at AC Milan, he became part of one of the most complete backlines in football, winning the 2007 Champions League. But it was with Brazil where Cafu's relentless style became legendary. He's the only player in history to appear in 3 consecutive World Cup finals, winning in 1994 and 2002, while captaining the Seleção in the last of those. The sight of him charging forward, then chasing back, defined Brazil's balance. Attacking flair didn't mean leaving gaps, because Cafu would cover every blade of grass himself. His recoveries often ended with those trademark stand-up tackles, timed with the precision of a sprinter hitting the finish line. By the end of his career, he had run his way into history. More than 140 caps for Brazil, countless surging overlaps, and a legacy as the model of the modern fullback. Fabio Cannavaro, the spring-loaded jump. Standing at just 5 feet 9 inches, he looked undersized compared to the towering strikers of his era. Yet his signature move, the perfectly timed leap, turned aerial battles into his personal showcase. Cannavaro read the ball's flight like a mathematician, timing his jump so precisely that forwards half a foot taller were beaten in the air again and again. The world saw his spring-loaded leap at its peak during the 2006 World Cup. Italy's defense conceded only 2 goals in 7 matches, none from open play, and Cannavaro was everywhere, cutting out crosses, soaring into headers, and throwing himself into blocks. His leadership and anticipation was so complete that he earned the Ballon d'Or later that year, a rare honor for a defender and the last centre-back to win it. At club level, Cannavaro's aerial timing was just as crucial. Whether with Parma, where he lifted the UEFA Cup in 1999, or at Real Madrid, where he won 2 La Liga titles, his ability to dominate taller opponents set him apart. He made heading look less like brute force and more like choreography. Spring, hang, and land with the ball cleared. John Terry, the diving head block. He was the type of defender who'd risk his face before giving up a goal. While most players threw in a leg, Terry threw in his skull. Shots, crosses, even low-driven rockets. If the ball was in range, he'd launch himself headfirst, turning clearances into moments of pure madness. Chelsea fans came to expect it. Whether it was a Champions League knockout game or a scrappy Premier League battle, Terry always had that one moment where he flung himself across the turf to stop what looked like a certain goal. In the 2007 League Cup final, he nearly paid the price for it. Diving into a challenge, he caught an accidental boot to the face, was knocked unconscious, and had to be rushed to the hospital. Yet days later, he was back in training, helmet strapped on, ready to do it again. That summed him up, fearless to the point of reckless. Over his career, he played more than 700 games for Chelsea, winning 5 Premier League titles, a Champions League, and 5 FA Cups. Every trophy run was decorated with his trademark blocks, each one celebrated like a last-minute goal. Managers loved him because he set the tone. If the captain was willing to put his head on the line, everyone else had to match that level of sacrifice. Franco Baresi, the offside trap maestro. His signature move was stepping up at the perfect moment to spring the offside trap. Strikers would think they'd slipped in behind, only to look up and see the flag waving, their run wasted, their frustration boiling. Baresi made a mental game out of defending, orchestrating AC Milan's legendary backline like a chess grandmaster moving pieces with absolute precision. As captain, he led Milan through their greatest era, winning 3 European Cups and 6 Serie A titles between the late 80s and mid-90s. Alongside teammates like Paolo Maldini and Alessandro Costacurta, Baresi formed the spine of Arrigo Sacchi's revolutionary high-pressing system. The offside trap wasn't just a gimmick, it became Milan's secret weapon. Opponents hated it because it required flawless teamwork, and with Baresi in charge, flawless is exactly what they got. He carried that same authority for Italy, winning the 1982 World Cup as a youngster and leading the Azzurri to the 1994 final, where he returned from knee surgery mid-tournament and played through pain, even in the penalty shootout against Brazil. His ability to read the game made him stand out in an era dominated by hard-tackling defenders. His trap set the rhythm of matches, forcing strikers to play on his terms. By the time he retired, he was the symbol of tactical intelligence, proving that brains could dominate brawn on football's biggest stages. Alessandro Nesta, the standing block. His signature wasn't wild tackles or crunching collisions, it was the standing block, a perfectly timed step across an attacker that ended danger before it even began. He had a way of gliding into position, waiting for the exact second, and then cutting off the ball so cleanly that strikers looked stunned, wondering how he'd even got there. His elegance came from anticipation. Nesta studied opponents like a scientist, breaking down body language, touches, and angles until he knew exactly when to move. In the 2003 Champions League final, he produced a masterclass against Juventus, shutting down world-class forwards with interceptions that turned defense into poetry. That performance helped AC Milan secure the trophy on penalties, and it cemented Nesta as one of Europe's elite defenders. For Italy, he was equally crucial. Part of the legendary squad that lifted the 2006 World Cup, he played a key role in the group stages before injury cut his tournament short. Even then, his influence lingered. Italy's defensive steel carried on the foundation he helped lay. Across his career at Lazio, Milan, and the Azzurri, his standing blocks became his trademark. Marcelo, the last-minute recovery run. He'd surge forward like a winger, dazzling with flicks, nutmegs, and crosses, leaving fans gasping and managers sweating, because when he flew upfield, someone had to cover the space he left behind. But here's the thing, Marcelo's signature became the madcap recovery run, the lung-busting sprint back to save the day just when it looked like Real Madrid were about to pay the price. Countless times at the Santiago Bernabeu, attackers thought they'd slipped through the gap he left. Then Marcelo came racing into the picture, hair bouncing, body angled low, and either slid the ball away or muscled his opponent off balance. He made defending look chaotic yet effective, mixing desperation with flair. His timing didn't always feel textbook, but it worked, and in the Champions League, it became part of Real Madrid's legend. Across 15 seasons with Los Blancos, Marcelo made over 500 appearances, winning 5 Champions Leagues and 6 La Liga titles. His marauding style redefined the left-back role, making it as much about attack as defense. But those recovery runs, where he saved Madrid at the very last moment, kept him from being labelled reckless. They were reminders that for all his freedom going forward, he could still flip the switch and throw himself into a desperate intervention. Jupp Stam, the shoulder charge. His signature move was the shoulder charge, and it came with the kind of raw power that made attackers think twice before even trying. Stam was a mountain in motion, and when he leaned into you, the duel was already over. Opponents bounced off him like they'd just run into a wall. Signed by Sir Alex Ferguson in 1998, Stam became the enforcer of Manchester United's treble-winning side. In the 1999 Champions League campaign, he dominated Europe's best forwards, combining brute strength with surprising speed. The shoulder charge was his exclamation mark. Perfectly legal, perfectly timed, and perfectly humiliating for whoever was on the receiving end. He didn't just shine at Old Trafford. After leaving United, Stam anchored defenses for Lazio, AC Milan, and Ajax, carrying the same trademark physicality. Strikers who thought Serie A would give them time and space quickly learned that Stam wasn't about to let them breathe. Even Ferguson later admitted selling him was one of his greatest managerial regrets. That says everything. Stam only spent 3 seasons at United, but his reputation as an unstoppable force lived on for decades. Philipp Lahm, the textbook stand-up tackle. He was called the Magic Dwarf in Germany, but there was nothing small about the way he defended. His signature move was the stand-up tackle, clean, precise, and perfectly timed. Where other defenders slid in and risked chaos, Lahm stayed on his feet, reading the ball, stepping in at the exact moment, and stripping it away so smoothly it almost looked rehearsed. At Bayern Munich, those tackles became routine. Over 500 appearances, he helped the club dominate Germany with 8 Bundesliga titles and capped it off by lifting the 2013 Champions League trophy as captain. Pep Guardiola famously called him the most intelligent player he ever coached, and it showed in Lahm's timing. He rarely fouled, rarely got booked, and still managed to shut down some of the best wingers in world football. Internationally, Lahm wore the armband for Germany's 2014 World Cup triumph. Playing both fullback and midfield during the tournament, his intervention set the tone for a side that overwhelmed Brazil 7-1 and went on to lift the trophy in Rio. His stand-up tackling was about control. He made opponents feel like their options had disappeared, all because of one perfectly timed step. Giorgio Chiellini, the tactical foul grab. His trademark was the tactical foul grab, shirt pulls, arm locks, and the kind of subtle fouls that stopped attacks dead before they started. Strikers hated it, fans laughed at it, and teammates loved it because Chiellini always made sure the team survived. The most famous example came in the Euro 2020 final at Wembley. England's Bukayo Saka burst clear on the wing in extra time, and Chiellini simply yanked him down by the collar like a nightclub bouncer ejecting someone from the door. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't glamorous, but it worked. Italy went on to win the title on penalties, and that foul became a meme Chiellini himself embraced. Across nearly 20 years with Juventus, he was the embodiment of their defensive steel, winning 9 straight Serie A titles and forming a legendary partnership with Leonardo Bonucci. For Italy, his leadership spanned over 117 caps, highlighted by that Euro triumph where his blend of grit and guile carried the Azzurri through. Chiellini's grabs and cynical fouls weren't mistakes, they were deliberate tools. He knew when to break up play, when to stop a counter, when to take the yellow card so his team could reset. That mastery of timing and pragmatism turned him into one of the game's last true old-school defenders. Marcel Desailly, the power clean-out. His signature move was the power clean-out, using sheer strength to brush strikers aside and reclaim the ball like it was never theirs. There was nothing subtle about it. Desailly stepped in, applied force, and attackers bounced away like they'd hit concrete. He rose to prominence at Marseille, where his physical dominance and composure helped the club win the 1993 Champions League, the first and only French team to do it. A year later, he repeated the feat with AC Milan, anchoring one of the most feared defenses in Europe. His presence made Milan's backline unbreakable, and his cleanouts often set the tone early. You try running at him, you're leaving the ball behind. Internationally, Desailly carried that same presence. He was a cornerstone of France's golden era, winning the 1998 World Cup and Euro 2000, combining with Lilian Thuram and Laurent Blanc to build one of the strongest defensive units in history. His raw power and timing neutralized even the best forwards from South America to Europe. By the time he moved to Chelsea, his reputation was global. The Premier League's physical strikers found out quickly that duels with him were punishments, and that's the lineup. 18 defenders, 18 legendary defender signature moves that turned the art of stopping goals into a highlight reel of their own. If you enjoyed watching this video, you'll surely love this one.